January meeting. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And tonight, before we move into our actual items, we're going to have our prayer by Rex Gaither, who's our finance director, and our pledge will be done by Mike Strange, our director of utilities. If you'll all stand with us, please.
Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for the beautiful day that we had today and another day of life that you've given us. We pray that you'd watch over our fire and police and first responders as they protect our community. Bless all of our other employees, Lord, as they provide the services that make this a great town, a place that we call home. We pray for wisdom for the council, Lord, as they make decisions that affect the quality of all of our lives. We pray for all of our citizens, Lord, that we would learn to respect each other so we can live in peace and harmony. In your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Rex. Mike? Miss Diane, if you'll do roll call, please.
Councilman Cole. Councilman Morrell.
Here.
Councilwoman Peebles.
Here.
Councilman Short.
Here.
Councilman Sullivan.
Here.
Vice Mayor Adkins.
Here.
Mayor Reed.
Here. Item 3 is approval or corrections of the minutes of the December 11th, 2018 and the January 2nd, 2019 minutes. Jeff, are these in order?
In order as to form, Mayor.
Do I have any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I move we approve.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes pass. Brian, any correspondence or communication tonight?
No, ma'am.
Awards or recognitions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. We will now move on to our consent agenda, which are items that are determined by the town manager to be routine, items that are not necessary for individual discussion, but if there's an item that a council member sees that they'd like to pull off and discuss individually, we can do that. I always like to read these items to the audience at home as well as the audience here so they know exactly what we're voting on. We actually only have 4 items on the consent agenda tonight. The first one is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute a contract with Neil Schaefer Incorporated relative to the construction, engineering, inspection services for Enon Springs West Extension Project. Item B is approval and authorization for the mayor to approve Gresham Smith Incorporated for the NEPA and design services relative to the Sam Ridley and Old Nashville Highway Intersection Improvements Project. Item C is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute an extension agreement with Betty Brin Children's Museum relative to the Thomas Edison exhibit at the Smyrna Outdoor Adventure Center. And the last item on the consent agenda is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute a special event application to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers relative to the 2019 Boat Day Waterfest at Jefferson Springs Recreation Area. Is there any item that a council member would like to pull off and vote on individually?
Actually, I had a few questions that I got past.
Okay, then we will pull that off and vote on that individually. Any other item? Then do
I'll move to approve the remaining items, taking A off of the list.
Okay. I have a motion to approve the other 3 items. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll now look at item A, which is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute a contract with Neil Schaefer Incorporated relative to the construction, engineering, inspection services for the Enon Springs West Extension Project. Raquel?
Hi, Tom. Hey. I saw something that I overlooked before when we were going over this, but on the Exhibit E with the list of the cost and the pricing, there's a section that has sub-consultants. Who would that be as a part of the project under the engineers?
If they it'd be any construction materials testing services, so they may have to hire out material testing services such as concrete testing, stone testing, asphalt, mixed design.
So they would hire a subcontractor to do that testing because
Yes.
they don't do it. Okay. Okay. And then as far as the figures that are on that Exhibit C, are they hard figures or estimates for the project?
Those are hard numbers. It's hard to say that they're exactly hard numbers, because if a major issue comes up and it takes a lot of effort from a project manager or engineer to come out and take a look at and evaluate an issue, it could go a little bit over budget, or the project could go a little more smoothly and come in a little bit under budget on that part of it. If they do extend the project, if it goes past the substantial completion date, it would cost more money, but then there's liquidated damages from the contractor that we would ask for, that would repay and recoup some of the costs for any overages.
So this is an estimate based on everything going smoothly, pretty much is what we're looking at, really?
Making some assumptions in there that
Okay.
in projects that go on, there are always going to be some issues that come up, so there's some wiggle room in it from
Okay.
that perspective.
Okay, those were my questions.
Okay. Then, do I have a motion to approve item A?
Motion to approve.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll now move on to old business under section 7. Tonight we have 2 public hearings. The first one is a consideration of a resolution relative to a plan of services for property located on tax map 51, parcel 12.00 and 14.00. Kevin?
Mr. Mayor and Council, the next 3 items are all regarding the same project. It's a couple parcels of land, tax map 51, parcels 12 and 14, owned by Kenneth and Marilyn Mitchum. This first item is the plan of services for the annexation of these 2 tracts of land. This puts in writing all the services the town will provide upon the effective date of annexation, which is everything here except for water. This does lie within the CUD service boundary. The Planning Commission did review this and did recommend it to you unanimously.
Questions for Kevin on this? We've already had discussion about this at 2 separate meetings, so if no questions for Kevin, then I will go to the public to see if anyone's here to speak for or against this item. Seeing no one, I will close this public hearing and go to the council for a motion.
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item B is a second hearing on this item, which is a consideration of an ordinance relative to the annexation and PRD zoning of property located on tax map 51, parcels 12.00 and 14.00, containing approximately 22 acres. It's requested by SEC Incorporated on behalf of Kenneth and Marilyn Meacham. The property is located east of Montgomery Way and north of Lee Road and south and east of Woodmont Development. It's a second reading. Kevin?
Yeah, this is the annexation and PRD zoning of the property we just looked at as far as the plan of services. As you said, it is surrounded by Woodmont to the north and west, and vacant property to the south and east. The zoning in the county is RM. The zoning in Smyrna is the Woodmont PRD. The proposed PRD is for a 97-lot, single-family residential subdivision. An existing street in Woodmont, which is Maple Creek Drive, would extend into this development and provide the initial road access. There will be 3 stubs into surrounding properties for future access and continuation of this to traffic flow to other properties. Did put the pattern book that was the revised pattern book, which was revised since first reading, which addressed comments 2, 3, and 4 in the there were conditions of the approval by the Planning Commission. That's their recommendation. The one item that was not in the pattern book was regarding the sewer extension plan. In that intervening time since first reading, we have received copies of the easements that were recorded. There were private easements between the 2 property owners to allow for the sewer from this development to extend through into Woodmont to use the pump station as part of the townhome development. We will need that to be a public easement, and we would address that really when the plat comes in for phase 6B of the Woodmont development. Again, it was between the 2 property owners. It was just a private easement between the 2 owners, but we would address it with the plat to make it a public easement, because it will be a public line.
Questions for Kevin?
So when you make it a public easement, they're going to dedicate it to the town? Is that
Yeah, it would
what
be
you-
required when they do the plat for that section of Woodmont, that it would just be, the easement will have to be shown anyway, because it's gonna be, obviously, it's an easement that exists on the property. And so we would just require them, instead of it being a private easement, that it would be a public easement for purposes so that the town could maintain that line going forward.
So it'll be dedicated to the town of Smyrna?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions for Kevin? Seeing no questions for Kevin, then we will go to the public to see if there's anyone here to speak for or against this item. Seeing no one, we will close this public hearing and go to the council for a motion.
I move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Our next item is our housekeeping item, which is a consideration of a resolution and memorandum of ordinance 18-42 relative to the annexation and PRD zoning of property located on tax map 51, parcels 12.00 and 14.00. Do I have a motion?
I move we approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll now move on to our new business. Under the Planning Commission report, we have 3 items. The first one is a consideration of an ordinance relative to the rezoning of property located on tax map 27H, Group F, parcel 31.00, containing approximately 1.7 acres. It's requested by Mary Jenkins Klein from R2 to R2 with historic overlay. The property is located at 112 Oak Street. This is a first reading. Kevin?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is a request from the property owner there, Mary Jenkins Klein at 112 Oak Street. It's about 1.7 acres of property. It's about 130 feet or so south of the intersection of Oak Street with Sam Davis Road. Land use plan would support the downtown mixed-use development in this area. Surrounding zoning is a mix of R2 and C2. There is an existing house on this parcel known as Idler's Retreat. It is actually on the National Register of Historic Places. Ms. Klein was who requested and had it placed there, I believe, in 2004. She did submit kind of a brief history of this home as well. The reason she has asked for this primarily is for added layer of protection on the home when she no longer owns it. And so the National Register does not protect it like our local historic zoning does, actually. But she has requested that the H1 historic overlay be added to the property. The Planning Commission, or the Historic Zoning Commission reviewed this first and then recommended it to the Planning Commission, who then also recommended it to the council. Both votes were unanimous.
Okay. Questions for Kevin on what Ms. Klein has asked?
There's no restrictions to them being non-contiguous, obviously.
There's not, no.
So they could be anywhere within the town limits?
You can designate any parcel in town in the overlay.
And one of the questions we did discuss at planning was the fact that the home owner actually knows that this does put a little bit of burden of restriction on what they can do with the property's exterior and so forth. And they're aware of that.
And
But they still
wants that,
requested it
actually.
anyway,
Yeah.
so.
Did you say the Kleins did not own it? Is that what I heard you say?
They do.
They do. I
This-
thought I heard you say they did not all the,
No,
there
no.
towards the end, and I thought it's
No.
requested by Mary, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, she's requested this, so
Right.
it's there when she
Okay.
doesn't own it anymore.
When she doesn't own it
Yeah, in the
anymore.
future,
Gotcha.
yes.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for Kevin on this?
Well, just, I guess as a matter of, what would be the process for removing it from it? Would you just have to go through the same process?
It would be
or-
the same process. Someone would have to request and go through the whole process the opposite way. You just request it be
I just think
removed.
it's admirable that she did this. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful homes in the town, and I'd like to see it preserved.
If you know Mary, you know her love for the home and David's as well when he was here, so. yeah.
Well, all my life, I mean, I can remember when Mr. and Miss Cheney lived there, and they would always be talking about their home, and oh gosh, they put the swimming pool out back, and you know, they were icons of the community back in the day.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions for Kevin? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Second item under new business is consideration of an ordinance relative to the rezoning of property located on tax map 28E, Group A, parcel 15.00, containing approximately 3.2 acres. It's requested by Tyler King to go from R4 to C2. The property is located at 389 Rock Springs Road. This is a first reading. Kevin?
This is on, as you said, 389 Rock Springs Road. It's at the intersection of Rock Springs Road and Highland Avenue. Land use plan would support a commercial or downtown kind of mixed-use development in this area. The surrounding zoning is a mix of R2, R4, R6, and C2. An existing house on this parcel was torn down several years ago after the May 2010 flood. This entire tract does lie in either the 100-year floodplain or floodway, so development of this property, regardless of what the zone is going to have very significant challenges. The Planning Commission did review this and did recommend denial unanimously.
Okay, questions for Kevin or Mark or Tim? Have any comments on this one?
Yeah, you know, the R6 property across the street was a challenge, and we probably saw that 2 to 3 times during Planning Commission, and that was in a flood zone. It wasn't in a floodway, and there was so much of the challenge as far as moving fill in, raising elevations, and doing that. So, being in a floodway, we thought it would be more of a challenge, which made us wonder, you know, what would be there, how it would be laid out, how parking would be handled, first of all. And secondly, a C2 is a hard move when it's adjacent to the R4 and R2. It's just, I mean, typically if you look at a movement there, it's, you know, office, or it's C4, more neighborhood community. So with the challenges and the movement in what I would think would be a hard zoning change, we just didn't feel it was appropriate to approve.
Anything else?
No, I'd just like to speak up and say I appreciate y'all's diligence, because with R all the way around there and then putting a C2 right in the middle, it really makes it no transition for those residents at all. It's just straight commercial. And then to your point, the floodway, and most of us probably remember that property being pretty much underwater for better part of a few weeks. So it's a hard sell to be able to put anything there the way it is.
And C2 is such a blanket.
Anything.
It allows a lot of things, so we just, I agree with what Tim's comments were. We didn't know what that use would be, and so because of all those challenges, we just felt like it wasn't a good fit.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Then do I have a motion?
I move we deny.
A motion to deny. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of denial, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is denied. Item 3 is consideration of an ordinance relative to the rezoning of property located on tax map 33, a portion of parcel 53.00, containing approximately 73.85 acres. It's requested by Jerry Butler to go from R3 to PRD. The property is located on Big Sun Lane, and this is a first reading. Kevin?
Mr. Mayor and Council, this is a request to rezone a tract of land from R3 to PRD. The map that's actually on the screen there, I just realized, is actually incorrect. That's the map we used for the Planning Commission. The map that's in your packet is correct. It is the entirety of the tract, not the entirety of the tract, but all of the tract that goes east over to Percival Street there, where it's currently the R3 piece. So, but what's in your packet is correct. The request is to rezone the property to a PRD. It is, as Council is aware, it is adjacent to Rocky Fork Middle School and the soon-to-be Rocky Fork Elementary School. Land use plan would support a mix of commercial and office retail multifamily in this area. Surrounding zoning is a mix of R1, R3, and C2. The proposed PRD is for a 261-lot single-family development. Access would be from Big Sun Lane with eventual connection to Spring Hill Drive and a future frontage road shown on the major thoroughfare plan along I-24. This PRD does include section 1 of the development, which has already received final plat approval. I did attach the pattern book that was submitted for the proposed development. Shows the layout and building elevations, and et cetera. The Planning Commission did review this and recommended approval unanimously with 4 conditions. 1, that the architectural elevations will be a minimum of brick, stone, and fiber cement siding on all sides. HVAC units will be to the rear of the houses. The homeowners association will have a third-party administrator, and the side setbacks are 5 feet. We did receive a revised pattern book. What's in your packet is not the most recent one. We did receive it just yesterday. It does show addressing those conditions. We will have that for you for second reading.
So in our book currently, I see where it includes what is on that, where it says R3 and C2 all the way over
To the north on.
to the north. But also included in the pattern book that we have has a sliver that goes to the west of the school that kind of goes up by Spring Hill Drive. That's not included in this, correct?
That's not included in the request. That's not requested
Okay,
to be changed
because
at
it's
all.
showing on this. Okay.
Okay, yeah, it was not, that was not a part of the PUD. It's actually, even the original sketch plat for the R3 did not include that area. That's some fairly steep topography in that area, and it
Okay.
was, they're not looking at developing that
Okay.
at this time at all.
Knowing our significant discussion after the presentation that we had last week about what we're looking to do, did you all have discussion about that?
The vision?
With the vision
Absolutely.
and all of that?
We did, and matter of fact, I was going to talk about that.
Okay.
And Tim can chime in as well. That's the first thing I actually brought up because of the location, and this being a potential new gateway into our town at some point. The visual aesthetics was going to be very, very important to us. And with the original zoning that they had under R3, they could have easily gone in there and done a lot of vinyl siding homes. So through discussion, and I think the landowners are here, they can tell you that I was leaning away from any kind of idea of approving this because of that location, because of that vision. But as we dove into this, we found some trade-offs with them that kind of made sense to us to help that visual aesthetic look, allowing some more lots for them, but also taking away the ability to use vinyl siding as a predominant product. So we ended up with the hardy or cement siding, stone and brick combination type of setup, no vinyl siding. We thought that was important and was a good trade-off to bring in Section 1, which was already zoned R3, into this PRD and require those same aesthetics.
Okay.
So from a vision perspective, yes, and that's why I think we felt like this made sense for that vision. It's a better looking product.
Tim, anything from you?
Well, if you look at what we've done with our PRDs recently, not only here but elsewhere, when we're looking at the building materials and whatnot, and lot sizes and whatnot, we have, in an effort of consistency and safety, especially when we're with 5-foot setbacks, gone to masonry products, as far as fire hazards are concerned and things like that. The one thing, if you look there, when you bring schools in, neighborhoods are gonna come in. And we had such an extensive discussion about Rocky Fork, Enon Springs, about what our expectations were as a council, both from a commercial building perspective and from a residential perspective, which we acknowledge will build out as we go through the development here. I was like Mark, when I first saw this, I was opposed, but as we worked through it, considering the elevations that we got concessions for, plus the amenity areas, I think the front section amenity was, Kevin, was it 2 acres or was it closer to 3? I'm trying to remember.
It wasn't a whole, the main amenity area in the front section that's already been approved is primarily just a large detention
Right.
pond. So this actually adds a lot of amenity area that wasn't really a part of the overall plan originally, right? But it wasn't required
Right.
as an R3 development.
So that, and we've got a nice walkway over to the school, that will help transition the children across the street and to the schools and whatnot. To me, this stepped it up and made it a quality product, and it made it fit with what our vision of this corridor is going to be.
With our push for walkability and bicycles and things like that, you feel comfortable?
Yeah, or sidewalks, underground utilities,
Streetlights.
streetlights, yeah,
Okay.
I do.
I just had a question about the density portion of it. I watched the meeting and I saw all of the trade-offs that were made, and I'm in agreement with what both of you discussed at the meeting. I just know when it was brought to you, the first thing that they were discussing was the fact that it was going to be more dense. And so I guess I would like to know how we came to an agreement that we were okay with the increase of the 40, is it 46?
About 46 or more lots.
46
yeah.
additional lots.
And because you did see what we said in the meeting, you probably get why that trade-off meant it had some value to us, giving up a little more density for the product itself to be cleaned up and look a lot more presentable and acceptable to what our vision is. It's 40, it's a 46 lot increase. And one of the things too that, for what I do for a living, the market has shifted a little bit, and I think the builder was a little concerned about that. It's probably what got them to start thinking about doing this. I don't think their intention was to come in and necessarily really all they wanted to do is add some more lots because of the market. But in the process, talking through it, as Tim mentioned, we just came to realize that this is a future gateway for us. We really don't want a bunch of vinyl-sided homes there. So that was the trade-off, and we felt like the density was worth the trade. To get Section 1, 2 brought in with this, it even made it that much sweeter for us.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll add that with the middle school there and the elementary school coming online, you know, the square footage starts at 1850?
1,800.
1,800, okay. You could see that the type of homes that they're proposing here would be very family-oriented, and again, because of the walkability, the amenity areas and whatnot, so it's a good mix with the schools there. So I could reconcile in my mind going to an all-masonry product plus the amenity area that we have, and in consideration of what we want to do here, it moved me from a no to a yes.
Kevin, are they doing sprinklers on the 5 foot now?
No.
No.
Kevin, can
It's in their development standard here, that's why I was asking. I don't recall having that conversation.
Yeah, that's, the revised one does not have that in there, because that was the discussion about going through the masonry product.
Okay, that's what I thought,
Right,
that's
yeah.
why I asked. I'm sorry, Steve.
That's all right. Question about Thunderstorm Lane, which is the road that runs just, I guess that's east of the property, I guess that's what that is?
It's actually north.
North, okay.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell from the plats and drawings that have been submitted. Thunderstorm Lane, is that a public street?
No, that's a private street that's just kind of circulates traffic around the school.
So is Spring Hill Drive and the backside of this property
Will
going
be
to
public.
connect to that, or it's going to be closed?
It will, and yes, and Spring Hill Drive will be a public street,
Okay, so,
as well as they're building a piece of Wildwood Drive also, which should extend eventually and connect to the existing Wildwood Drive.
so is this kind of like the road that cuts through the Stewart's Creek schools between
Similar idea.
Morton and whatever that other road is?
Poplarwood,
Poplarwood.
yeah.
Okay.
It's very similar, yeah.
Is there any sort of buffer, whether it greenery or fencing or anything between those houses that are adjacent to Thunderstorm?
Yeah, that's, in that, yeah, there's like a 10-foot buffer, and that is in your packet on one of the pages. I can't
Yeah,
remember
I
exactly
kept
what
looking, I
page it
couldn't
is.
see
Yeah,
where it
there is a 10-foot, but basically they're gonna leave alone kind of that area, those border areas,
Okay.
a minimum of 10 feet.
Okay,
And the 25-foot garage setback is still intact?
Correct, yes.
I like Raquel. I watched the video and listened to, basically, I think you guys talked about it for about 45 minutes that
About a
night.
while, yeah.
And
Was it that long?
yeah, it was right
Thank
at
you.
45 minutes. And it was a lot of good discussion, and I see how you came to where you came to with it, in that you have a little bit more control under the PRD. I guess my question, or really my concern, is that do we always have to give up size for lots to be able to get the PUD? Because I don't like getting in that situation to say, okay, well, all right, if we're gonna get the buildings we want, then we have to give up the lot size. And is there no other, there's no other option? It's either or? It's either lot size or what it looks like, you know, basically quantity versus quality, I guess is what is my concern.
Well, I mean, pretty much every development we have going now, almost every one, is in some sort of a PUD, just because.
Yes.
To make the numbers work for a developer, they have to increase that density to justify with the land costs and development costs and that sort of thing. That's why we're seeing so many of these, you know. Yeah, you have the trade-off of, if they do that, they're probably gonna do, I think we've had one where they didn't do that. The gentleman out on Cook's Lane, you know, hasn't begun his development yet. Pretty much everyone else is gonna do, want the smaller lots, and they're willing to do more amenities and more aesthetically pleasing, I guess you might say, homes, as a trade-off for that. I mean, if to get it to 10,000 or a 12,000 square foot lot in an R2 development or something, any more is going to be difficult, just because the economics of development these days.
And I know that, and I'm looking at some of the pictures of the houses here, which I don't know if this is what they're going to look like or not. It looks like kind of a small house to me. But we talk about the gateway, and basically we talked about it 24 hours before this meeting and what we were trying to get to. And I don't know, to me it doesn't look like we're heading in that direction. I mean, this is one of the first things that we talked about after the gateway, and then we're kind of, I don't know, this looks like we're kind of cutting ourselves a little bit short. Now, again, if we can only do one or the other, then I see where you guys came to your conclusion that night, in that, to me, that's probably the best for us, and it sounds like it's the best for them as well, if that's the only two options that we have. And I'm kind of like the others were. When it first came in, it was like, why are we doing this at all? And then after I listened and watched, I saw, well, why it was voted that way. But I guess the question is that the only two options that we have? Well, and maybe not for this, but in the future.
I mean, really, any development in R1, 2, 3, 4, whatever district it is, if they plat it out, I mean, we have zero control really over the aesthetics of the house that's going to be built there. It could be, you could have $1 million home or a $150,000 home, you know, and there's really no control one way or the other by zoning in that regard. To have that control, you have to go through a PUD route, and so typically it's a lot more, we ask a lot more of the developer up front with that. They have to go through a lot more, you know, they have to plan everything out on the front end and show us what they're going to do on the front end versus just, I want the 100 acres zoned R3, you know.
Now, on PUD, we could actually require the lots to be larger though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The PUD is, I mean, it's a zoning decision for the council to make, and if the council planning commission decide, yeah, we're okay with the overall layout, but we would prefer the lots to have a 10,000 square foot average instead of the 8,500 is what they're showing. That's a decision this council can make on this or any other PUD. So.
Jerry, I guess it was kind of a rock and a hard place, because as it sits right now, we could have said no, and the developer could have said, okay, then we'll continue on with R3. And the way that our ordinances are and have been for a long time, we could have had 80%, 90%. We could have had 100% vinyl product.
But how many homes would have been on the same parcel?
Well, it was already approved for 215.
It was about 215.
Yeah.
The sketch plat was.
So we're picking up 40.
It was 260.
It was about 46 more. 215 to 261.
I would point out that based on the vision that we're laying out for that Enon Springs connector, this residential single family is pushed a block back behind Enon Springs. It's not right out on the road too.
You know, we actually did not include this track because it had already had this approval. If it had been, it had the sketch plat approval, and the final, section 1 has a final plat approval. We didn't include west of Percival, in this area just because of that reason, because it already had a development plan approved.
And in addition to that, I know that planning and council both have gone over this before, but because we know that's a potential future gateway, the land that comes off of what would be Enid Springs or Rocky Fork, right there off of 24, we're really trying to keep an eye on that for commercial use and so forth. So there'll be a buffer in front of this property going forward at some point. And, you know, I don't want to get lost in the fact that we're talking about what it costs to develop, and it's kind of a free enterprise system. You've got people selling their property now, and they want to get top dollar for it. You would if you owned it. And so that's driving the cost up, and therefore the yield has to match the cost or they can't make it work. And that's why we're seeing more of this.
I got another question. Spring Hill comes into this parcel of property here, but the other end of Spring Hill has yet to develop. And how do we see the transition occurring from that section of Spring Hill into this section of Spring Hill?
Well, the school board will be building their piece of it. They are currently doing that as part of the elementary school construction. So you'll have, once this is developed, you would have it completely on this south side. I believe that section is probably, I think it may be the last phase of this development. So that's probably a few years down the road before even in this piece of it would be built. I believe there's only one track between the school and where it's currently dead ends, I believe. I may be mistaken, there may be two, but there's not very many. So
But we've not had any plans for that yet?
We have not had any plans submitted to us, no.
I just would encourage the planning commission that when that comes, that we get a transition development between the existing Spring Hill and the rest of that subdivision up there to this, taking into reference the densities of what that area is compared to what this area is.
Other questions or comments?
Across the street, I think it's at Willowwood.
Wildwood Drive,
Is that, what is that zone?
on the east side of Rocky Fork you're talking about
Yes,
there?
uh-huh.
Yeah, that's a PUD, that's a PRD. Primarily single family. There's one track, kind of the piece of the land that's not at Rocky Fork Road that had a little bit of a mixed use part of the PUD that's not developed yet, but.
So this is not the first one in that area then?
Oh, no. This is, of course, as you, on the other side of Rocky Fork has been quite a bit, and then north of this, you have the Hidden Hills development and Cedar Forest and all that area.
Other questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion that we approve.
A motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item B is the Packaged Liquor Board report. There are no applications for the Town Council to consider at this time. Item C is consideration of a resolution approving the Town of Smyrna to apply for the Community Development Block Grant, the CDBG funds. Mike?
Yes, ma'am. As part of the application, we do have to do a resolution allowing us to apply for the funds for the sewer rehab project.
Questions for Mike on this? We talked quite a bit about it at the council workshop.
Permission to go get money.
So is that a motion?
A motion we approve.
And that's a second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Our next item is a consideration of a resolution approving the Town of Smyrna to secure the assistance of the community development partners in the preparation and administration of the town's 2019 Community Development Block Grant application. Mike?
Yes, ma'am. This was the first of two RFQs we did as part of the application process. You have to go out for RFQ for administration services. There was only one bidder, and it was Community Development Partners.
Okay. Questions for Mike on this? Then do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item E is consideration of a resolution approving the town of Smyrna to secure the assistance of Dempsey Dilling and Associates in the engineering and design of the town's 2019 Community Development Block Grant application. Mike?
Yes, ma'am. This is the second RFQ we did, and Dempsey Dilling was the only bidder. This is to handle the engineering part of the application.
Okay, questions for Mike on this? Do I have a motion?
I move we approve.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I know we do have something from Jeff under other. We were each contacted by email and then I think called individually. Jeff, is there anything you want to talk about a little bit?
Just to restate, this is just a consideration of an amendment to the limited term wholesale water supply agreement with Nolensville College Grove Utility District. This is to clean up some language from the 2015 term section. Basically states that this agreement to provide water will go out to a minimum of 2024, and each year we can decide if it's going to be extended on yearly occasions.
I want to thank you and Brian and anybody else who was involved in this for the time and effort you've put in. It's something we've kind of been dealing off and on with for quite a while, so appreciate that.
And their board has approved it this morning.
Oh, they did?
So
Great.
it's on its
Okay.
way.
Questions about this for Jeff?
The only question I saw, Jeff, when we got this, when I read over this earlier, I'm a little confused by the comment, the party's objection to one automatic extension does not prevent a future automatic extension. So that doesn't mean we could skip a year?
Yes.
Okay, so we
Yes, it
could.
means that each year it will automatically extend for a year unless we make an objection, so that, you know, say that we do it this year, it would end then in 2025. If we don't do it, then it would end in 2024. But next year, if we wanted to extend it for a year, we could. So it doesn't cut it completely off if you decide not to do it for that year.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
And Jeff and Mike, this might be a question for both of you. Concerns in regards to water allocation and things dealing with the Corps over the next
30 years?
30 years, whatever. I know we've kind of been dealing with them for quite a while on our allocation, so any concerns with that?
With this, which is one of the reasons we wanted to clean up the language, that we want to make sure that we didn't go out 30 years, 35 years. So I think it's fair to everyone, 7 years, which was intended to begin with, to be honest with you, which now 5 years left. But that is something manageable, that if we see that there's going to be problems coming down the road, which we don't suspect them right now, but in case there were, that would give us time and them time to find a new water supplier.
When the Corps is looking at their allocation, do they take into consideration that we're supplying water to other people, or do you know?
They have not mentioned it to us yet, Mike, that I'm aware of. It would only just affect the amount of water that we're able to get at the rate that we've already purchased it under. There would be more water available, but that would have a different price. But that's projected out 30 years.
Okay.
Yeah, what they look at is what we're averaging at the plant, what we produce and sell at the plant. It doesn't matter where it's going or what customers are using that water. It's the amount of water that we're producing. Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Okay. I just don't want to have an issue for our citizens by helping somebody else, because I know with the Corps and their determination of allocation.
Sure.
So, okay. Any other questions for Jeff on this? Then do I have a motion?
Motion that we approve.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Anything else under other?
Ma'am.
So as I was looking through the packet for the project we were just talking about, Kevin, somebody brought up to me that there is a new law by the post office that anything over 3 houses in a subdivision now has to have post office boxes altogether.
It's actually 8.
8, okay.
It's anything, any development, 8 houses or more does have, post offices now requiring centralized delivery. You know,
Okay.
Centralized, so they have to put together some sort of little part of their development that's where you can pull off and get your mail instead of the door to door.
And who's in charge of upkeep of that? How do you, and if there's no homeowners association, lighting for it, all that type of thing, how's that handled?
Typically, again, because we're doing so many of these as PRDs,
Right.
there is an HOA that would be one that would have to be working with the post office. I do know we have basically been directing everyone just to contact the post office. They aren't requiring it all the time. If it's an extension of an existing development that's just phase 3 of whatever, they're not making it a change then. They're only making it for new developments and whatnot. And they're still, if you just build a house on 10 acres, you're still going to have it. But if it's an 8 homes or more, they are requiring that centralized delivery now.
What's the requirement for development? 8 homes on 1 acre tracts, or 8 homes on what? What are
A
they?
development that is 8 homes or more is the only thing I'm
I
aware
got you.
of.
So
Anything that's platted, and if
So I was
5 acre
thinking of
tracts
the-
are not going to be.
I was thinking of the development that we discussed 6 or 8 months ago out off Rock Springs Road. That was
12 lots.
Yeah, 12 lots of like $1 million homes. They're going to have a kiosk. I mean, that's a little different, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, is there anything we need to do in our guidelines or anything in dealing with this?
We've kind of talked about it, and I've talked about it with some of the other folks around. I don't know that any of the ones that I'm aware of, anyone is writing anything in their ordinance or anything like this at this time. That we've talked about, do we need to do something like that? As I said, at this point, we've just kind of been directing them to go talk to the post office, and if they require it, show it on your plan, show us how you're going to lay it out. So we don't be sure that there's an adequate parking off the street, or do you have a loop road or something like that where people just kind of pull off the main road and get the mail and get back in and go.
Right.
Hopefully, you're trying to make it centrally located. Maybe if there's an amenity center, a lot of the folks are looking at putting them just near, if they're going to have a pool or something as an amenity, it'll be at the same spot,
Right.
so it'll be, the parking and all will already be there. That's what most folks are doing.
Do we need to go ahead and be proactive in,
Well, if you look at that book that we just looked at, it's on that.
that's what made me
Yeah,
think about it.
it's on there.
But do we need to be proactive in going ahead and setting up guidelines based on whatever the requirements are going to be? Or
I
do
think
we
gotta
just
be
take
careful.
the
I don't know
sit
what
back and
postal
wait?
requirements are, and typically they're gonna
Trump anything we have,
implement their
right.
own standard of
Yeah,
what
but
they expect.
I think what she's probably thinking about, and I would agree with this, is requiring
Loop road
security
lighting.
lights and stuff like that, because you could have people getting out to get their mail late at night or early in the morning, and it could be a security concern there.
We can, I'll do some research on that, see what other folks are doing. I'm not aware of anyone right now. In the discussions I've had in the past 3 or 4 months, when this kind of all started to come out, I'm not aware of anyone else that's doing that, but that doesn't mean they haven't changed their mind.
Is this a federal mandate or a state?
It's a USPS
It's a
mandate.
US.
Oh, so-
And I'm not opposed to us taking the lead and being the one that other people
Sure,
follow, so.
sure.
If you've got 200 homes, do you have one per 50, or, I mean, how big is this kiosk to be?
That's how townhomes typically do it already, and they have pockets where they have kiosks closer to the residents. Now, I guess it's not required to do one way or the other if they're gonna do this, but
I mean, in the apartment complexes, for the most part, I think they've
central.
been doing that with apartment complexes for a while now, too. Most of our newer apartment complexes have one, even if it's, oftentimes it's outside the gate, so that the delivery person can get to it without going past the gate.
Lee Crossing over there, HG, behind Publix.
Right.
There's several kiosks in there for mail. So they try to pocket locate those, but
We're just not seeing a lot in
it's
in
new.
subdivisions.
It's new for
a
single
thing.
family, in
So
the single family
I
development,
think
it's
we have
new.
to be proactive in some degree, that if we're gonna have this required of us, that we do have lighting and security, and we have a place to pull off. It's not on the main road coming in, or people can pull away from the road. That's pretty unsafe in my opinion.
Yeah, I saw some examples of this out west, in New Mexico, Thanksgiving, and I noticed that lots of their neighborhoods have this. I thought it was a little unique, but many of them had them right as you came in the neighborhood, or some had them near the amenities. But it did look like it was one kiosk per neighborhood generally with what they were doing.
Well, and what about upkeep? What can we do if there's, so many times it starts off as a homeowners association, then as years go by, it
Well, that's
dwindles
why-
and there's not one.
Require a third party.
Well, that's
HOA.
one reason we've been trying to require third-party HOAs, like Gertner and Timmons and some
If
of
it's
those
not a
people.
PRD, can we do that?
No.
Well, that was one of the trade-offs that we made
But if it's not a PRD,
Yeah, most
we're
of the
still
time,
gonna be
even
stuck
if
with
it's
it.
not a PRD now, you're gonna end up with a HOA because the TDEC
Entranceway.
mandates that the detention
Yeah.
ponds be in common
Entrance
areas
common
instead of
areas.
on private properties.
Okay.
And so you're gonna have, even if it's just a big detention area, you're gonna have to have an HOA to maintain that
So you
area.
think we're gonna be covered in regards to what I don't wanna have is a nice subdivision and then this cruddy area of mailboxes.
Yeah,
that-
somebody takes the mailbox out, who fixes it? It's those questions. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, Steve, in Florida, I just came from my daughter's subdivision, and it's a newer subdivision, and they have a kiosk there with the mailboxes, and there's a little drive-off or pull-through. It's not lit, it's maintained, but the reason it's maintained is the owner of the property carved that out, and he charges the residents a yearly fee to have a mailbox there, and I asked her, what do you do if you don't pay it? And she goes, you go pick it up at the post
I was
office.
gonna say, you could also have a,
Get a P.O. box.
P.O.
Yeah.
box, right?
Yeah.
Wish I had this when I was a newspaper boy.
Always looking for it easy.
Yeah.
Well, if you could look into that and bring it back to us as
Two
to
stops and I'm done.
recommendations.
Sure.
To, one, help people coming in that are doing developments, but also to kind of cover us as
Sure.
well. I only have one other thing under other, and I've talked to Brian a little bit about this. I've watched a couple of the committee meetings recently, and I'm seeing a lot of absences. It concerns me because when people sign up to be on a board or a committee, they are committing to helping out the town. I know there's even been instances where we've not had a quorum, and so we've not been able to meet and do business. One of the things that I talked to Brian about, we are going to have ones that are currently on boards and committees that their term is not up. If they have exceeded the 3 absences in a year, that they're going to be called and they're going to be asked if they want to continue. I know that there are reasons sometimes that people miss 3 times in a year, and I get that, but a lot of times they may not realize that they've missed as many meetings as they have. And so we want to see if they want to continue. The other thing that I asked Brian about that I think he's going to work on, if you all are agreeable, is some sort of board guidelines to sign when you initially come on board that is kind of general to all boards and committees of what their responsibilities are and what our expectations are of them as a board member. And I just wanted to make sure you all were okay with that. We'll appoint boards in March, and I just think that it's something really important for citizens that are wanting to do business with us, that they have to have these board members present for them to be able to do business.
When they apply for the board, help me remember, is there a question on there about any problem attending so many meetings per year or whatever? That might be something.
It spells out when the meeting is. It spells out the time of the meeting. It talks about attendance and that sort of thing, so.
Okay.
And we're just thinking something, and I was gonna talk with Jeff Peach about this, a generic form that we can have them sign as being a member of the committee, and just remind them that you're obligating yourself to make certain attendance standards and those kind of things. Now, they're always gonna be in an emergency, and we understand those things, but, we've got some committees that we've got as much as 5, 6, 7, absences in a row. Do they really want to serve? And if they don't, that's okay. This is a chance for them then to remove themselves from that committee. If they want to serve, though, there are some standards we need to make sure. Because if we're holding ourselves up on committee level, and that's where, the start of our business practice goes through to the council, if we're holding that stuff up, it's not fair to the other citizens that are trying to do business and ask for, anything from a BZA variance to, the beer board or something like that, so.
So I just wanted to take your temperature to see how you all feel. One, about having some sort of general responsibilities for them to sign, that if Jeff can put something together for us and get that to us so we can look at it prior to the March. They obviously would not be signing it until after they were appointed to the board or committee. And then I also wanted to let you know, in case you get a phone call from somebody that's on a board or a committee, that they've gotten a phone call about absences, that you understand why we are making those phone calls and the importance of being present and serving on those boards. Now, with that said, that does not mean you as a council member can choose not to go to 3 committee meetings so that you're taken off. I knew it was. I knew it was.
Yes, I was.
Tim and I just found a way off the plan.
We'll be vacationing next month.
That's right. But I will. But I will say this to
I
those
wasn't
that
picking
are.
out any certain
That's right. That's right.
board at this time.
But I'll say this to those that are serving, we appreciate your service. It is so important to us as council members and to this community and to be able to get business done. So we appreciate what you do, but if it's not something that you can fulfill, there is somebody that would love to step up and sit in your spot, and we want to make sure that we provide that opportunity to other citizens. So, okay, nothing else under other? Miss Diane, anything?
I have nothing.
And Brian?
Just a couple things very quickly. We have 2 participants of Leadership Rutherford in the audience tonight, and I'd like to recognize them. If you don't mind, stand maybe and give us your name.
Kathy Farrell.
And I'm Matt Stearns.
Great.
Okay.
Are we going to see you in the morning?
You will.
Good. We have the mayors. We get together with Leadership Rutherford once a year, and the mayors all get together and kind of have a panel discussion. So that will be bright and early in the morning. So we look forward to seeing you again in the morning, right back here. Or you can just stay overnight if you'd like. So
Just,
you won't even have
just
to go
ask your
home.
questions of her now. And
That's
you can
right, and you
skip it
can
in
be
the morning.
done, and I'll sign off for you. Anything else?
Yes, and I did want to point out, and I'm going to embarrass Kathy. I've known Kathy a long time. I had the pleasure of working with her at United Way years ago. Kathy is a very special person today to our city, our town, in that she is the head of the Red Cross here in Rutherford County and has a great relationship. And I will tell you, at 10 o'clock at night, she is accessible by phone when we have a major fire in the area and we need some help. And I just want to compliment her and her staff and the work that they do and how appreciative we are of their work with our community. Thank them.
Great.
Last, 2 things. One is I want to just remind everybody on February 12th, our joint meeting at 4 o'clock with the Planning Commission and the council to update roads and a couple other things. To give you a little bit of a teaser, Tom and I had a chance to sit down with SEC this past week, and we've got a little bit of information on Jeannie Lane that we will be bringing at that same time. So just a little teaser to get you here and make sure you're motivated to listen about the road updates. The last thing I wanted to point out, and it's just...
Tom looked a little nervous.
He'll be okay. He's always a little nervous when I'm putting meetings
Those
together.
absentee things don't apply to them either.
Yeah.
That's right.
They get 1 absence. You know, it's very easy, and we do, and I don't want to take anything away from the kudos that we share, you know, like over the holidays with our utilities people and the police and the fire and those kind of things. But there's some unsung heroes sometimes. And the last couple of weeks, our building and grounds folks have been back in the building, and I don't know if you've been through, you know, they've, of course, here in the council room and the lobby, but if you start going down the arterial parts of the building, you know, you'll see the floors are being changed. We've got carpet going in a couple of offices, and then they've just recently completed 2 major renovations of restroom facilities that were much needed, much dated facilities, and they really look nice. And I just want to say thank you, Tom and his folks and the building and grounds folks. I mean, they do a wonderful job for us, and they do everything from fixing a light socket to a central heat and air unit on top of our buildings, and some of this renovation has just been added on top. So they're doing a really nice job, and it looks really good. So kudos.
Agreed.
That's all I
Anything else?
have.
Great. Jeff?
Just 111th General Assembly started today, and I'll be meeting next Tuesday with Beecher and his organization to talk about what legislation they're seeing that's coming down the pike and address that.
And we are asking Beecher to also be at the road update meeting as
He will
well.
be there.
Oh, great.
He asked if he was supposed to bring popcorn.
Oh, good. We may want to put him down for that.
Just real quick, I want to thank Jeff for kind of keeping us up on a lot of things lately, some of the new laws that are coming into play, and this whole thing with the Nolensville water system and so forth. So appreciate your work.
Thank you for
You
that.
and your team.
Can I point out one other thing? I'm sorry.
No.
Okay.
Yes.
I think we have somebody in the audience today that it's his birthday.
It
Mr.
is his
Rigsby.
birthday. It is.
Oh, Britney Spears will be here in a minute. Hey,
46.
Brittany's coming to sing.
Yes.
Hey.
Raquel?
Yes, I have a couple of things. First, I would like to say congratulations to the family of Ernest Long, who was a citizen here. He actually has passed away. But on Sunday, his family was presented with the Congressional Gold Medal for his service with the National Munford Point Marines from World War II. And so I would like to congratulate them on receiving that in his name and in his honor. And then secondly, my son has a birthday next week, and so I would like to wish him a happy birthday. He will be 11, so.
There you go, Gabe.
Yeah, yeah. Great. HG?
Yeah, this afternoon there was a accident in front of my business. And just wish that everybody would say some prayers for the folks who were involved, but it was very impressive to watch the fire department, the police department, and the EMS people in action out there. They're efficient and just, I mean, everybody went to the place and did what they were supposed to do, and it was made me feel safer. That's all I've got, Mary Esther.
Thanks.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing. Jerry?
Nothing.
Nothing. Steve?
A couple things. I would like to thank Kathleen. I did not know that was your role, but with the recently we've had a couple of apartment fires, and I actually got feedback from some folks about how well the Red Cross handled those situations. So I appreciate what you do there. I really didn't know who was responsible for it, but it's good to see who that is now. Very, very good job, and that. And most people in the community may not even know that it happened because it didn't get media attention. It didn't end up on Facebook. It was handled so well that there was nothing for folks to complain about, which is very rare. So I appreciate what you do. Appreciate that a lot. And that's all.
Mark?
I bet she knows Gene Coop.
I do. I do.
And Gene-
And can I just say, I know I should not be speaking, but for all of you, you are an example of what is right in our community, and so I so appreciate we couldn't do what we do without the support of everybody. Thank you. I see the chief sitting over there, but this is a very special place, and we feel very privileged to be able to serve your residents. So two big apartment fires in the same unit, but you all were remarkable, so I really felt like I needed to share that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In addition to my comment about Jean, because she's a sweetheart to a lot of us, and we think the world of her.
She's on my board.
No,
Yes.
no, actually I'm not, but Jean, those of us who know Jean knows what she means to the community and what she means to Red Cross.
Absolutely.
Her and Ben. Chief Arnold's back there, and I want to congratulate him once again on his upcoming award. And Chief, while I'm doing that, last week when we were in closing the council, I talked about a friend of mine that passed, and that was Bob Goins. I attended the funeral, and once again, the way the officers stand at attention, hold their hands over their hearts, it's touching, and the family really appreciated it, and I want to let you know that. I know you hear that when it happens, but it means a lot to see the dignity coming from our police officers given to those that have passed. So thank you for that, and please pass that along to your department.
I think it's one of those things that gives us that small town feel of neighbor to neighbor, so I would agree. Only thing I have tonight is I was lucky enough to get to go speak to the senior citizens today. Brian was there with me. They asked a lot of really good questions, and they're always lively. You all know that. So we had a great discussion. So. Anything else? If nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you.